How you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm very good. Thank you for having me here today. Appreciate the invite, Chris. It's always we've had quite a few conversations now, so it's always a pleasure. And yeah, mate, I love the platform, love what it stands for, as I've touched on there. Let's just blanket out the noise and let's just zone in on property.
Great stuff. Gav, I'm just going to sort of, I think we've got a couple of technical issues there with a couple of accounts joining. So I'm just,
Oh, really? That might be. I shared the link. If I shared the wrong one.
is that you? If you've shared the link, that's great. But there's, right, we've got you back. Brilliant.
Am I on?
Apologies
Yeah.
for that. So, Gav, in terms of yourself, you've been active in the UK Homes Network for about a year now. You've been sort of sharing your experiences, your journey through property. But
Uh
what I
huh.
want to do is I want to take it a step back because
Yep.
I think it's really important we find out a little bit more about you and how you got into property in the first place. So, what's your career like? What you're based in the southeast. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, listen, bit about Gavin. To be honest with you, my actual story does lead me to where I am and probably why I see and I understand the consistency side of things. But yeah, effectively, how I got into property, bit of a bizarre story, actually, but people that know me, I actually got a job as a ski instructor um, in a March. And then my mum said to me, I was only 20 at the time, and she said, you can't stay at home all summer. You've got to do something until you go skiing in the October time. And most of my family were builders. My dad's got a construction firm. And I tried a bit of labouring for my dad, but I was like, it just weren't really for me. I didn't want that. I wanted my own path, my own life. I didn't want to work for dad. And then I just got a job in a builder's merchants, basically. And because I went in there and very young, 20, bit naive to it all, very sporty, and just went in there and said, yeah, all my family are builders. I'll be able to sell this stuff. It's easy, as you would, young and naive, and got into it. Because I was quite sporty, I was into football at the time. I was going skiing, told everyone I was only there for a short period of time. And it just really clicked. It's just an industry that clicked with me. I was around a lot of good lads, similar age, that were all sort of good. The banter was good from a bit of a football background. So it was that sort of environment where, you could take the mick out of people. There was a lot of, great banter throughout the day. And ultimately, a lot of my friends, like family, started coming in, and then people I played football with that were builders during the week, they started coming in. And anyway, yeah, 20 or 22 years later, I'm still doing it. I never went skiing. I just fell in love with what I was doing, building, rolled it forward a few years, and I was getting a little, as you start getting a bit older and builders were coming in, you're building relationships, and then you start talking to people about what they're doing, and then it's, I bought this house, I'm flipping it, I've done this, I've turned the house into two, I've sold it, I've earned all this money, blah blah blah. And then as time went on, and I was ticking, I was like, there's something to do in this property world. And so that was my day to day, like 9 to 5 stuff. I've done a lot of sport on the outside, done a lot of running, done a lot of football, uh, skied every year, done a few bits and pieces that way. And, looking back now, some of the things that related in terms of like my fitness lifestyle. So I like to keep myself fit, like to keep myself in good shape. Basically, I was playing at half decent level in our area. I had a lot of good friends and around me from that side of things, and I was always into sort of health and fitness. As much as I enjoyed, playing football on a Saturday, and then Saturday evening, 9 times out of 10 wouldn't go home till I woke up the next morning, I was home, sort of scenario. Like, it was that sort of culture from where we was. But I'll get back to this point later as to why consistency and stuff sort of resonates so much with me now, from that side of things. So there we went on from there. My dad had a couple of properties while it was on, and his attitude was always, got to be the first one on site. You work hard, save your money, pay the mortgage off, earn your dough, you know, invest first. Everything else comes second. And it was all a bit of an old school mentality, if you like. It was, get there early, son, do the best job you can, be the best one there, earn as much money as you can, pay your mortgage off, then buy another one and go that way. So I sort of come from that sort of background, if you like. And while that was going on, I was chatting to builders and other people during the day. And I remember going to a networking event, and a lot of these points I'll come back to through the story of how Gav evolved and where I am today, and the 83 side of things come from. Because, and this is where consistency is so important, it isn't necessarily the day to day where you appreciate the consistency. It's actually when you step back in, it might be 6 months' time, it might be 5 years' time, but when you actually step back and look at the journey to where you are in that period of time, there will be certain aspects of what you do day to day will actually all of a sudden a light bulb will go off and you go, because I've done that every single day and I didn't stop no matter what. That's why I've got where I am. So it all does resonate to there. So I was chatting to builders and developers and other bits and pieces, and I got invited to a Tottenham Hotspurs game and with a load of house builders. We was delivering insulation to a lot of people in East London, Taylor Wimpey, Telford Homes, Barrett's, all the big boys, and we were chatting to the buyers and bits and pieces. And this was around 2008. This happened, and I was on a table with a lot of people that I spoke to, but only ever really about work. Never really got too much into investing or anything like that. And there was a gentleman there who was quite high up at one of the companies. Said he had lost a vast amount of money that week on the share price because of the recession. At the time, I was sort of 25, and the amount of money he was talking, I was like, mate, there's no way I'd be out for a few beers on a Sunday if I'd lost that amount of money. It was just
Yeah.
unfathomable for me. And he said, but in the next 4 years, what we've got lined up, what we've got on our books, what the pipeline is looking for, the hard work we've done to get to where we are, where we're going to go, that money's going to be quadruple. And I sort of, something just went off in my brain. And from there, I started investing in house builders during the recession. So I got into investing on the FTSE, bought some shares, and it was primarily just in Taylor Wimpey, Telford Homes, Barrett's. When their shares were all £4 and they all plummeted down to 30p, I started buying shares around then. And then I just got into investing from there, really. And then over the 4 years, he was true to his words. The stock price went up, and it probably is still going up. But I just got into investing that way. And then from that conversation, I started understanding a little bit more. I bought a property with a friend, made a massive mistake, bought 120%, is it, on Northern Rock, the old Northern Rock mortgages.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Done that, should never ever have done that. At the time, I shouldn't have done it, but we'll get back to that. And I looked at it and I was like, this is just, what's going on? What have I done? And then we bought this flat with my mate, and we had a night. We was going to move into this flat. It's going to be like a bit of a bachelor pad, men behaving badly, that sort of thing. We grew up around that sort of scenario. We'd play football Saturday, go out for a few beers after, just takeaways or whatever it is, go down to the gym in the week, whatever we were doing. But the night we got it and went out to celebrate, he met someone. He's now happily married with kids. So that whole ethos and that whole vision in my head never happened. But what happened was 6 months later, they got quite serious. She fell pregnant, and he was like, "I want out." And I was like, "Well, will you owe me money then?" And he said, "But I'm leaving." And I said, "Yeah, but we bought it 120%. The market's crashed. You owe me money. It don't work like that." Like, and he just didn't grasp the concept. And so anyway, we come to an agreement. He was going to pay me off over time, but I was in a bit of a pickle. So I ended up going to get a second job, working. I was quite lucky. I got the opportunity to do some night shifts on London Underground, as well as working during the day. So for 3 days a week, I was working all day, and then I was going home, sleeping for a couple of hours, then working 4 hours at night, just to pay off this debt. I moved home, very lucky. Mum let me move back. My mum and stepdad let me move home. And I moved back. I said, Mum, I'll be back for 8 months. I'm going to save up, pay this debt off, and I'll move again. While all that was going on, during the day, I was making some great connections and meeting people, and I was investing in some shares and bits, and I was having conversations. And I'm quite cheeky and a bit cocky with things, but I think a lot of that is to mask a bit of an insecurity I had when I was younger. I've later learnt that now, that the wittiness, the cockiness all come from some insecurities. But that insecurity really helped me talk to people, and not be afraid to ask questions. I'm not. listen, Chris, if you've got a 7 bedroom house and 100 acres and a Ferrari, good luck to you. I want to know how you've got it. I'm not envious of what you've got. I want to know how you've got it. So I just
Yeah,
started asking these builders that, when, bearing in mind, I started when I was 20, I was probably 27 at this time. I'd seen some of these builders come in and flip a few properties, and all of a sudden, instead of driving around in a beaten up van, they now had 3 or 4 vans, and they were driving to work in a truck. And I was like, well, how have you done this? And I was learning, I was asking questions, I was chatting to people about investing. So behind the scenes, all 15, 16 years ago, I was already understanding, what it took to talk to people and network. I didn't know how to piece it together. I was understanding that you've got to get up early, you've got to work hard, get yourself out there, be creative with your money. There's other ways of earning money. You don't have to just do your 9 to 5. If you're prepared to sacrifice your evenings, you can go and earn a little bit of extra money, and you can put yourself in the right positions. And that went on for a while. And for anyone who's heard this, apologies, but I remember a guy come in one day, and he only ever come in after 12 o'clock. He used to drive a beaten up red van, and one day it just didn't start. And jokingly, I just went, mate, if you actually got to work in the morning rather than the afternoon, you'd probably be able to afford a decent van. To which he turned around and said, do you know what, Gav? I'm a stockbroker. I've got a portfolio of 20 properties, all in a 5 mile radius of where I live. You just happen to be the closest merchant, and I just do the maintenance. I do my investing in the morning. Anyway, so you can imagine, by this time I'd spoke to some other people. I started investing in shares, and he just gave me a fantastic bit of advice one day, and I use it every day, and I say it all the time now. Set yourself a goal, and when you get there, just stop, don't look back, set another one and go again. And I've done it with some shares. I set myself a target with some shares. Once it got to that sale price, I sold, and I've never logged on to that. There could be more in that share account for all I know, but I've always lived by it, and I work by it. Set yourself a goal. When you get there, that's it. You've achieved it. Enjoy it, celebrate it, set another one and go again. So I've been quite fortunate, really, and I think a lot of this chat is going to be about. I think some people you can overthink consistency. You can overthink what it takes to set something up successfully. You can overthink everything, really. Whether it's your personal health, your weight, your fitness, what your missus thinks, what your mate thinks, or what your family thinks, what your business partner thinks, what people think of the branding, all these things. But ultimately, the thing comes down to is when you can just get to a point and just go, this is my path, this is what I'm doing. Set yourself a goal, you've achieved what you want to achieve, and then move on from there. And that's got me to it. And then my business partner now, Joe, come to me and said, Gav, have you seen this thing where we can buy properties up north and we'll be on a yacht in a year? And I was like, mate, I don't think it's that easy. My old man's been working for 40 years and he's not quite on that yacht, and he works hard. But there's got to be a way of being creative, because I've met these investors through chatting. I've met this person over here who's now got different people and he's leveraging himself. I've gone and got a second job, which helped me pay off the loan. I actually missed the point of the story. When I went and got the second job, I actually saved up for 8 months through chatting to people. I actually found out I could buy a second property. So the day I went to my mum and said, Mum, don't worry, I paid that debt off. I'm now moving out. She went, oh, great. Do you want to moving back in? I went, no, I've still got that one. I've bought another property. To which she was like, what do you mean you've bought another one? But just through talking to people, I'd learnt the fact of I could have 2 properties in my name. I could rent one out on a buy to let and do that. Anyway, fast forward a few more years, some other bits and pieces. Joe said to me, do you want to come to this seminar? So we went to the seminar, then met people, and just realised, the creativity that's out there. Realised, there are people out there who will help you. Realised you don't have to work your fingers to the bone on site. You haven't got to do that. You can leverage yourself and other people's money. You've got to, if you structure it in the right way, X, Y, and Z. And yeah, and that was it. So, and then 9 years ago, 83 Property was formed. And so the point of all of that little long-winded answer is really to say, I think looking back now, all these little tips and things I've picked up, well, they're around you anyway. Like I touched on the fitness side of things. I don't know if you're into fitness or anyone else is into fitness, but you go down the gym for 3 months, it'll take you 3 months to get fit or half decent shape. You go on holiday for a week, you lose it very quickly. So but you get back into the fitness, or you can get back into that. And but it's about doing the little things, like the little wins every day. There's no point if I spent 6 months training for a marathon, and then didn't run for a week, there's no way I'm going to run a marathon. You have to do the consistent little runs and build yourself up, build your stamina up, build your strength up, your diet, if that's what you want to look at. You have to do them things, and then over time you'll get to a point where the fitness is where you want it to be, your health will be where it'll be. Like, you'll know this, Chris, hopefully this resonates a little bit with you, like with what you've done. Like, you can't just stop straight away. It does take time to get to that point where you want to be. And I just broke it down into, how can I make daily wins, how can you do them things, and that's where it all comes from. Is that sort of making sense, Chris?
Yeah, Gav, I think the one thing that really strikes me about you is that there is a very thin line in property between being risk averse or prepared to take risks and
Hmm.
actually being prepared to give things a go and actually
Uh-huh.
just, actually give something a try. And
Hmm.
you don't strike me as a person that sort of takes foolish risks, but you do strike me as a person that is almost grateful to get an opportunity and give it a try. So you've got lots of different stuff going on with your investments
Hmm.
and with property, and you've got sort of a lot going on, but
Hmm.
it's because you're prepared to give everything a go and see how it works. And that's quite a positive attitude that you sort of bring forward. Would you say that's a fair representation of
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think the thing with it is, I mean, you might say I'm not risk averse, or is it just stupidity? But listen, I've made plenty of mistakes, mate. I don't mind admitting that. The diversity comes from, I believe, understanding that and speaking to people. I've learned through investing. You shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. I think you have to diversify a little bit. You have to adapt. You move forward. You've got to have a plan. You've got to stay on track with it, and you've got to build. You've got to build systems uh, I think the willpower, the persistence, and them sort of things that people say I've got. It's just, it all comes through building the system. We've got the pot. We've got a system, and we're on track to. Like, I've got the big picture. I know what the big picture is, and that's exactly what I want to do. You know, 83 property was formed by the fact that me and Joe were born in 1983, and the goal is 41 properties each and a holiday home, which is 83 properties within the portfolio. Like, that is the goal, that is the target. Like, it's on my chest, I wear it. I say it every time I pick the phone up. Gav, 83 properties. Like, it's just so ingrained in me that is it's just like a non-negotiable. Like, that's what I want to do. But again, I don't just relate it to property. I just relate it to anything I do in life. If I want to, like, if I do a lot of running, like I say, if I want to get fit for a marathon, then I go, right, okay, I've got a 6 week training program. That's what I'm doing for 6 weeks. That's where we go. But I think you are right in some ways. I agree with that. And I think the thing with it is, it's just like understanding where you can go and the path it can take you. But on the flip side, some of the mistakes we have made, Chris, is that I have been too sort of scattergun, I have been too diverse at certain situations. I have deviated away from the plan.
Yeah, I mean, I said that, but in terms of when we look back at your sort of career and your experience, you've
Hmm.
spent a lot of time speaking to people and learning how they do it, which
Massive, so important.
is
Yeah.
is, is so important, and it's a clear sign that you don't just rush into things. You do obviously try and learn and understand exactly, you know, what it is that you're pursuing. It's not just the case that I think that's the difference between being putting yourself in risky situations
Mhm.
and actually doing what you do, which is saying, yeah, I'll give it a go. But you speak to so many people and network and learn about what it is that you're prepared to
Yeah,
throw yourself
I,
into.
I get what you mean now. I suppose to a certain extent, yeah. Like, it might seem to the outside world like we've done, over 100 transactions across 11 different strategies. People might go, "God, that's you've done a range of different things." I think the thing for me is, like, I'm not the cleverest bloke in the world. I can barely spell my name. It's just like, I just think sort of consistently just outweighs sort of, like, it's just the wanting to understand, the wanting to learn. Do you know what I mean? And, like, if you was to say something to me tonight, I'd be like, well, that's fine, but I need to hear it from 3 or 4 people before. I'm not just gonna. If you said, like this bottle of water is the best water in the world, I'd go like, oh, I've tried this water the other day. Chris said it was good. Have you ever tried it? Like, it's that sort of, that's my sort of mindset. And then once I've done it, and I touched on it with you earlier, like if you had that 10 acres and that 7 bed house and the Ferrari, I'd want to know how you done it. So I would ask the question, and then I would want to sample it for myself. And would that help me achieve what I want to achieve? Because I know what I want to achieve. What I'm trying to understand is what's the best path to get there. Like, listen, any path you go on, there's going to be diversions. You've got to, you know, I do it. I mean, everyone, well, not everyone, but most people, if they're a little bit weird like me, have probably played this, like race the sat nav. You know, you might try and say, oh, the sat nav's telling you to go down this road, but you go, well, actually, I used to deliver papers down that road. I know there's a shortcut. Like, we've all done it. Like, I mean, we haven't all done it, but if you're weird like me, you've done it. But do you see what I mean? So it's, and I'm just wired that way in life.
Yeah, no, I love that analogy. I literally did that today. So I drove back from Manchester to get home for this webinar, and the sat nav was telling me to come off the motorway at a different junction, and I was like, "No, that's rubbish. I'm going the way I know because I know I'd get
Yeah,
there quicker." But it just so happened that I did get there quicker. So yeah, it's right. You do build up a sort of self-awareness. You mentioned about sort of going into business with a friend
yeah.
who then obviously moved on
My
with their
best
life
man at my wedding.
and yeah, and decide to move on. So I think when you speak to any property investor or any landlord
Mhm.
or developer, there isn't one that hasn't at least done a minimum of 10 properties, maybe more, that hasn't entered into a JV at some point and got stung or found that there's been issues along
Ooh,
the way.
yeah.
Do you think that those relationships, certainly because you meet a lot of people and you network with a lot of people, do you think that that forms your decision making process? So you said to me that for a bottle of water, you'd need at least four recommendations for that bottle of water. Do you
Yeah.
think it's those earlier experiences in property that has shaped that, or is that?
Yeah, 100%, and I don't mind admitting it. There is and this is why, again, like when I said I'd come back to it, like I said earlier on, a lot of things that have happened to me and the mistakes I've made and things I've learned. You know, I think what shapes why I'm doing what I'm doing in property, why I am quite social with it, why I am pumping it out there. But yeah, listen, I've had JV partners that, even with asking four people about this bottle of water, chances are I might not like it anyway. Everyone, and it's the same with people, right? But yeah, I've had JV partners. Got one in particular this year that has left me and Joe in a bit of a pickle, which means that neither of us will pay ourselves this year, based on the fact that we have got the credibility that I will make sure the investor gets their money back. Just because they won't pay them, that's irrelevant and up to them. But yeah, 100%, it does. Like due property is about due diligence, right? And not just due diligence in the property. I think you need to look at can your solicitor do it. I've had an experience with a solicitor. I couldn't do a title split properly. It took us months to get this across the line. Can your builder actually build a HMO? Does he know what the fire regs are? You know, he might say he can build it, but can he actually build it? JV partners, they might say they're going to bring X, Y, and Z to the table, but what's going on in their home life? What are they doing at home? What path are they on? What have they done like what have they done previously? It goes on. The broker, can your broker actually deal with, can he actually deal with a bridging loan that's going to be refinanced onto a service accommodation mortgage? So there's so much behind it from there. But 100%, like, listen, this all comes from experience, but also as well, I think that I like to say and highlight these things because I. I have made them mistakes, and I probably will still make mistakes still, but I just don't think enough people talk about it, like that side of things. But and also I think like not enough people talk about like how hard it actually is, like to keep going. Like when you have tough days, like we touched on this morning. I left home at like 4 o'clock this morning. I've driven 400 miles. I was 5 minutes late to the meeting with you. I'm finishing this going into another meeting. I've got another 15-hour day tomorrow, but ultimately it's all down to the fact that like I'm on that path, I'm on that journey, and for me, I'm celebrating by the fact that that's the path I'm on. People might go, I've never do like 40 hours in like 3 days, which is what my 3 days consist of, but I'm celebrating the wins. Like next week, I'm probably only going to do 2 days next week, and the week after, I'll probably only do 2 days. So it's about setting it up so that, yes, this week is hard, but life is hard at times. But you've just got to find a way to celebrate the wins as and when you want to live, when you need to celebrate the win, when you need to celebrate them. But for me as well, a big thing behind property and remaining consistent is got to have good people around you. Like, I've met your partner, Chris, at your event, like how supportive with everything is. How much easier is that when you get home and you've had a tough day and they understand the journey you're on and they understand your path. And people always say to me, Gav, how do you end up getting all these leads? How do you talk? How do you find it so easy to raise money? How do you know what everyone's doing? And I think the thing is, it's just talking. And people are a bit like, oh, I wouldn't, I couldn't walk in. Like my post office, for example, I know the bloke who owns my post office has got 12 post office and he's got 500 grand in the bank. Could you walk in a post office and know that about your owner? The reason why I know it is because I'm in there 3 times. I'm in there 4 times a week buying my lottery ticket. I go to the same places every time. But that sounds like you're smirking. I laugh, but the reality of it is, he sees how consistent I am because I consistently go Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday to the same place by the same numbers, and I have the same conversations with him. So if you bring that back to property, when he goes like, "What do you do?" Go like, "Oh, mate, I'm in property. I'm looking for deals." Ultimately, subconsciously, he's going to go, "Well, I see him 4 times a week buying his lottery ticket. If he applies that to his work balance, what's his work ethic going to be like?" So consistency breeds credibility. Then you relate that to property and people that want to raise money. If people see you doing the same thing consistently, then you've got the credibility of being consistent. You ask them for money, are they going to be worried about you going to work every day and getting the job done? Or are they going to be thinking, is he on holiday? Is he out with his mates for a few beers? Do you see what I mean? So, but when you actually understand that ethos and why I think consistency is so important, these things win. I can tell you loads of stories. Even the sauna. My little thing for me is, and I actually learnt this off a guy I network with. He's raised £1 million from our gym just from sitting in the hot tub. It sounds amazing. I go to the sauna 4 times a week, 6 o'clock in the morning, 4 times a week. There is a gentleman in there, and it's taken me probably 6 months to learn this for him to understand me, and I've dropped a few things in there. But he's just sold his company 2 months ago for 3.5 million, and he's looking to invest somewhere. you know, what have I just done there? I've just turned up for a sauna 4 times a week at the same time he does, said hello, asked him how he is. I've not pushed property on him. I've not pushed investing. I've just shown the consistency and then dropped it in there. And we're having some great conversations now.
Yeah. Do you know what, Gav? I call it, so I've got a name for it. I call it sauna chat. And the reason
Yeah.
is because when I go in the sauna, there are blokes that will sit in there and they basically want to fill the noise with
Yeah.
just any old chat. And
I hate
most of the
that. I can't
time,
sit in silence.
no, well, no, these are blokes that can't sit in silence, but they don't have anything interesting to say. So they'll literally
Yeah.
make going to the park sound interesting, and it
Yeah.
blows me up the wall. So if you were sat in the same sauna as me talking about property, I'd absolutely thrive on it because it's something interesting that you can talk about.
Yeah.
And I think that that is a really important place to have that conversation, particularly when there's a few boys in my sauna that just chat absolute rubbish. So yeah, that would be a really interesting place to have a conversation because people are actually willing to sort of network and engage in
On
there.
that as well, though, Chris, when they're having them conversations, it's nonsense. I've been in that situation a few times. I try and spin it the other way and try and throw something in there just to get just to get them off that subject and just go, lads, like, don't talk about that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So in terms of your early career and your early
Mhm.
personal life, you
Uh-huh.
mentioned that sport was such an important
Yeah. I've got
an
so much
important
energy. Yeah.
aspect to your life.
Hmm.
Now, when I'm listening to your story, the consistency of showing up 4 times a week for a lottery ticket or 4 times at a time for the sauna, it sounds to me you almost sound like certain interviews that I've had with, or certain interviews I've listened to with really intelligent sports people, where they
Hmm.
understand that those touch points that you need to get the end result. It
Yeah.
sounds to me like that you figured out that property is a sport, and that if you have that
That's fair.
sports person mentality when you go into any area of business, you're going to end up with results. Do you find yourself sort of making it a bit of a game, a bit of sport into your head to, because it can be, consistency is quite boring, right? it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
monotonous,
Hmm.
it's showing up every day. But if you sort of frame it in the idea of sport, the way that you have done when you know, sport and football and
Hmm.
skiing and running was so important to you.
Hmm.
Is that a good way of getting into the mindset of it to keep yourself engaged and keep consistently showing up?
Do you know what? I think that's a really good way. I've never really actually thought of it that way, but I actually think that's a really good way of analysing it. I don't know if Joe's listening, but yeah, he plays a lot of golf, and I always say to him, "Well, mate, you ain't like the only reason why you're half decent at golf is because you play every week. So what's the difference? Just pick up the phone each week and speak to people. There's no real difference. Like if you don't play golf for 2 weeks, you ain't going to be any good. But if you don't pick up the phone, you ain't going to talk very good, are you? So it's the same sort. I think, to be honest, with you, I look back on it now and just go. The biggest thing with it is they're just easier measurables and they're easier ways to enjoy the process. Like property is a long game. You can watch as many YouTubes as you want and speak to as many property coaches as you want. There's no get rich quick skip. There's no get rich quick scheme. Property is quite a long game. So to stay on track of what you're doing, you've got to find you've got to find ways to celebrate and ways to sort of reward yourself. And I just think for me, like having the touch points of like at the moment, I'm doing one thing I'm doing to keep myself consistent is I'm trying to do a podcast, which you sat down and greatly done with me, and it was. I wanted to do 52, like one a week for a year. Like that's hard work, but the conversations that's given me, and time and time again, the same things coming up in these conversations. I don't know how many weeks into the year we are. Probably what, like 40 weeks into the year, maybe 30 odd weeks into the year, whatever it is. Every week, it's you talk about systems, structures, consistency, the persistence. Talk to everyone. It's them five things come up every week. I've heard that 40 times this year. So it's ingrained in me, like them sort of things. But yeah, I think you're right. Really, maybe measure, like finding the small measurables, like fitness wise. If I want to push 100 kg in the gym, I don't know why I've said that because I never would. But um, if you could like bench press 100 kg, you're not going to do that off the bat. You've got to measure what you're doing each week till you get up to that. And I do. You are right. Relate most of my life back into that sort of short, measurable things, and then you always feel like you're winning in some degree.
Yeah, I've mentioned this. I think I actually mentioned this on your podcast, and I will plug it towards the end and give you the chance to plug it
That's
because
right.
it is a brilliant podcast, and I certainly enjoyed being on it. But some of the guests you've had on have been fantastic.
Thank you.
The one of the sort of analogy that I always think of is my dad used to tell a story, and it was sort of his go-to, for success metrics, which is he would ask the question of why you think the British cycling team are one of the best cycling teams in the world. They beat the Dutch, who are constantly on their bikes. They
Yeah.
beat the Americans. They beat the French. They beat everyone. World championships, European championships, and Olympics. And the reason is because the British decided that they weren't going to look at the overall weight of the bike or how much pasta they were eating that day.
I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah, they were going to actually look at what nutrients go into each grain of flour that goes into
Yeah.
that pasta and what actually is the aerodynamics of the pedal
Yeah.
that is causing the drag on when they're sort of turning the wheels. And
Mm.
that those small measurable differences made the overall difference, which was that they were winning championship after championship. And that always stayed with me. That, and it sounds very similar to your story. But you mentioned property gurus, and I want to sort of take it back to this because this is something me and you have spoken off camera about quite
Yeah.
often, and me and you are very aligned on sort of the state of gurus
Hmm.
and sort of mentors, shall we say, in the
Hmm.
industry. Your career, you we'll go back to this again, but you consistently show up, you consistently network, and it's fair to say that some of your motivations are, it's not all of it, but you are slightly motivated by sort of material possessions in terms of 83 properties and a holiday home, 82
Yeah.
properties and a holiday home, and
Hmm.
you would like a yacht and the
Yeah.
nice car and all the rest of it. When you've got property gurus that were sort of pumping that kind of content when they're because they talk in that language of like a numbers
Yeah.
game and and then it results in a
Yeah.
Lamborghini or a Ferrari. What was the difference between um your property journey that actually said no, I don't want to go down that route, I want to find my own way, and I want to what was the sort of what stopped you from being drawn in from that and being sucked in by that messaging?
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked a few times to do some bits, and I do help the odd person here and there, but uh, it just doesn't feel real, if I'm honest. And it is a way of just sort of, to a certain extent, trading time for money. I don't know. It just doesn't sit well with me. I just I can't really pinpoint exactly what it is. I mean, I say about the yacht and the nice cars and all that sort of stuff. Like, to a certain degree, Chris, my biggest achievement is, like, I've got an amount of money I want to earn passively each year through property, and I want to disappear into the woods, man. I don't even want a phone. I don't want to be present anywhere. Like that'd be lovely to me, because I know I'll go and talk to people. I'll meet people. I mean, that's sort of the real thing. But like, the number of properties will basically just give me the money that will achieve that. I think it's difficult. I just think it's. Listen, my old man's been a contractor for sort of 50 years, and even he still says to me, "Look, mate, I'm still doing jobs. I'm still learning." Do you know what I mean? I think you've done it for 50 odd years. You had like 60 blokes work for him like a year ago, and I'm like, even he's still going, "Oh, I'm lost on what I'm doing here." From that side of thing, I think people that have been into it, like, for a short period of time, things are evolving. Like, laws are changing. Like, it's like anything. If you don't speak to your solicitor for a couple of weeks, how can you be present with them? How can you get a favour? Your builder, like, how do you know what's going on with I mean, your builder might be all right in January. Next, if you don't deal with him for a year, what's happened to him in that year? He's something could have happened in his home life. He might have split with his missus, kids or whatever it might have happened. His mum might have, dad passed away, or however it is. I just think you've got to be present with everyone at that time, and ultimately, it just doesn't sit right with me, mate. There's something in the back of me that just says it's just not quite right to, because it is so hard. It just doesn't feel right to take lumps of money off of people when it is that hard. But at the same time, I fully appreciate, and probably wouldn't have done what I've done without going to something like that. So I'm not I'm not against it. I just feels like it needs to be regulated in some ways. I could reel off 10 people that are so-called, property
Yeah.
gurus.
Well,
Um,
I think there's not a person in the world that wouldn't want a yacht or a
yeah,
Lamborghini or,
yeah,
a holiday home in Ibiza or all the rest of it. Like that is like
yeah,
inherently, as humans, we all want the nice stuff. That's
yeah,
absolutely fine. I think what I'm learning about you is that you have such a value on the relationships that you've built, and also
yeah,
an incredibly good judge of character, that
yeah.
you're never going to be sort of attracted to those kind of style of gurus, because you noticed that they didn't value the relationships that they were building as closely as what you were, and that's why you push back against it.
There was a few things early on as well that happened. Was that, I won't mention any names, but there was a lady I met just through networking, and her husband was a bit against her spending money on training and investing up in the north, and
Mm.
she done that, and the deal went wrong, and she paid money for the mentor and coach. The deal went sideways. The builder run off with some of the money, didn't finish the job, which happens. And ultimately, the mentor she had paid for wasn't experienced enough, or hadn't had this happen to them, didn't know how to get out of it, couldn't help in any way, sort of all said, well, it's part and parcel of property. That's not what you've paid for, me to get you out of this mess. And, I remember speaking to her. She was in like floods of tears. I mean, I didn't really know how to help, really. It never happened to me. But, she split with her partner for a while, had two kids. He didn't want nothing to do with her. The mentor, and she'd spent thousands on his mentor. And the attitude at home was, I told you not to do it. You've given all these blokes some money up in the north and you've lost it all. And the mentor just basically turned around and was like, that's part of property. We've got to make a plan to get out of it. But it's what it affects behind the scenes that I'm concerned about, that in people are spending all this money. But the thing with property is, and why I talk about sports and the day-to-day habits, like going to the post office, people think it's trivial. It's like irrelevant, really, but it's not, because these people that are saying these things, and just go and talk to someone, just go and speak to friends and family and raise some money. but what security are you backing it up with? Like, what consistency are you showing to get there? Like, how are you presenting these packs? There's no point me sitting here with you, Chris, and go, right, go and speak to all your, print off a colourful document, all these properties and bits and pieces, and go and speak to some family and borrow 40, 50, 100 grand out of it, and this will work and all that. Well, that potentially that is right. And property can change your life. And I've earned great money out of some property deals. I've also lost a lot on other stuff. But it's how can you back it up? Like, if it does go wrong, you know, how can you repay that loan? You know, what is going to happen? Like, I just think the world of property, there's a bigger understanding to it. It's not just property. It is life changing, but it can be life changing in two ways. You know, like me and Joe have just done a deal. We sent a letter to a house, got planning permission, you know, for a bungalow, and we sold the plot of land. Brilliant. Like, absolutely one of the best things we've ever done. You know, like, it's a life changing amount of money in terms of pound per hour. But also this year, we've had a JV partner that's outright refusing to pay an investor back. So, and that investor's coming to my wedding. So I've had to pay the investor off myself personally because the JV partner won't do it. But when we set the company up 4 years ago, we didn't have the right structure. And there's a loophole in it that this JV partner hasn't got to pay that money. So it's life changing in one way. So on one hand, I've done a really good deal this year, but it's been outweighed by the fact that I didn't have the right systems and structures in place, and I've had to pay someone else the other way. So, but luckily, this happened at a time when we had a portfolio and I've got money and I've got equity, so I can sustain it. And I've got a very supportive partner into both at work and at home. Whereas this lady I referred to years ago didn't have a partner, and her home partner was anti it, and she was left in a pickle, and now has walked away from the industry. And I think I just look at that and just go, "You've been paid a lot of money. Yes, you've done your property stuff, but it's more than property." And I've just seen it happen too many times. Enough just so for people to put it in context. I've also had someone renting a property off me, selling property courses online, and for 6 months just didn't pay their rent. And it took me to go on to one of their webinars, and while they were talking about this property, these courses they were selling, for me to text them and say, "Do you want me to put in this chat that you haven't paid your rent for 6 months, or do you want to pay your rent?" So I've got experience on for both sides. One, someone who's paid money to someone who had a bit of experience, but didn't want to stand up when needed to. And I've also had someone who was relatively new to property. Yes, they were doing really well. And yes, they had done a lot of rent to rent deals in the first year of what they were doing. But ultimately, the company grew too big. They couldn't pay me the rent. I had to sit on a webinar and text them and say, "Do you want me to tell everyone who's on this webinar you haven't paid your rent, or are you going to pay it?" So it's a bit difficult for me. But the biggest thing is just for me, mate. All I know is, and what's got me to where I am, mate, is just hard. It is hard work when it needs to be hard work. And like I said, like next week and the week after, probably only gonna do a couple of days a week. If the phone rings, I'll answer it. I do what I've got to do. I will my daily routines will stay in place. I'll still go and get my lottery ticket. I'll still go to the sauna. You know, so I am remaining consistent with certain aspects of my life, but then you can take the foot off the gas and you can turn it on because the consistency's there.
Definitely. Well, on that note, Gav, we'll open questions up to members of our audience.
Mhm.
So, guys, if you've got any questions for Gav, you might want to find out a little bit more about some of the projects that he's currently doing. If you want to find out what sort of areas
Interesting,
he
Nathan.
operates in, the strategies he works in, please do fire it in. So, Fran's put in a question. When you get to 83, do you think you'll be able to stop, as it's obviously in your blood? You mentioned earlier setting and getting to goal, stopping, celebrating, then picking another goal, or is this one goal which you cannot stop at?
Oh, it's a really good question, actually, and I'm going to answer it in this way. I think, and with many goals, the 83 property, because I understand the business element of it, I don't actually think necessarily we'll ever get to the 83, because I think what's going to happen is the way life and the way the world is going is, and I'm understanding property because I look at it as a commercial entity now, that the yield I want to achieve, properties may fall below that yield. And as and when they fall below that yield, it'll be time to replace them and put them in. So I just think when we get there, I'll definitely plateau. I won't be as socially active in terms of social media and bits and pieces like that. I think it's just so ingrained in me, if I'm honest, that I will continue to do this. I love the chase. I love the creativity. If I'm honest, I actually want to. One of the main goals, and this I've learnt this in the last year, and I've just taken on a lad to do this. I actually want to find a younger Gav. I want to actually find a younger me with a bit of energy. You know, like them little toys you wind up and bounce around the table. Just want to find. I just want to find another younger Gav and go. Do you know what, mate? You go and do what you're going to do. I'm going to invest some money with you for a return. You go and make your mistakes, but I'm going to just pull the reins in where I have to, guide you in the right direction. So I think when I get to 80, 83, like myself, I think that would actually be more what I'll do. Probably find a younger me, male or female, and just go, look, I'll give them the guidance, and that's what I think a mentor should be. I'll go to them, like, I'll invest in you for a return, but I'll steer you in the direction, let you make your mistakes, but I'll make sure them mistakes aren't detrimental to where you're going.
Awesome. We're going to get to Donna's question. Donna, I will ask your question in just a second because it's a brilliant question. But Gav, we've mentioned the podcast, so
Yep.
I'd love for you to give it a shout out. But also, you run a free networking event in Essex. Uh,
Yes, yeah. So yeah, thank you very much, mate. Listen, look, 83 property, mate. You've only got just Instagram, really. I'm quite vocal on that. But yeah, 83 property group. Follow what we do on there. I just share my journey on that. We run a networking event in Brentwood's first Tuesday of every month. Effectively, it just started off at a place that me and Joe needed a place to go and chat about our month because otherwise we'd just work. We decided to go for a beer, and then we've just grown it from there. There's sort of 340 people in the group, I think. We get 20 to 40 people come down each month. It's free. I just chat like I chat tonight. I'm just an open, honest person. The podcast, I was asked to do a podcast last year, really enjoyed it. And I thought, you know what, this is a good way to sort of refresh the memory. And again, I set myself a little goal. I said, right, I reckon I can do 52 of these, do one a week for a year. And mate, it's been a challenge, I tell you. But been good, loved it, really enjoyed it. You just got to find them little things, mate, whether it's the lottery, Tuesdays or Thursdays, a podcast, going to the gym, whatever they are. Once you start getting these little wins, mate, it just gets so much easier.
yeah, 100%. I'm going to be coming down in November to your event. I really can't wait.
Beautiful.
I'm so excited. Gav has been messaging me to come down to Essex, and yeah, I'm telling you now, while we've got an audience, that I'm coming down in November. I am promising you
Beautiful.
that.
We're actually going to line that up actually as our Christmas do in November. So
Awesome. I look
that's
forward to it.
that's my little marketing ploy for this year. The South Essex Property Meetups Christmas do is actually November. I'm going to get in there before everyone else.
Awesome. I love that. Well, we'll help you support, gets as much attention around that in the network and
Beautiful.
obviously try and drive as many UK Homes Network members there. That would be great.
Thank you so
So
much.
Donna's been waiting patiently. Thank you, Donna. What has been your biggest challenge in property investment so far?
I think it's me. I think it's me. If I'm honest, I think yeah, I think just sort of energy, energy, desire, wanting to do it, and not following the system and structure. Just I think just needed to take a bit of a step back sometimes. And I've deviated. Like we touched on earlier, I've deviated away from the plan a few times. But my biggest challenge, I think, has been myself really. I would say has been like I've been chasing that goal. So I know this might sound totally against everything I've just said for the last hour, but effectively, I'm my biggest challenge really, from that side. And the biggest thing as well, it really is just a fear of failure. I think I talk about talking to everyone, telling everyone what you do, be consistent and do that. And I think they're all really key, and that's what really drives me forward. But when sometimes you can be that, you can sort of block yourself out. So when I've had lows, when I've fallen when I've sort of not got bored, but when there's been a bit of friction in my life, bits and pieces like that, I've become my own. The biggest challenge, but you then, because I do remain so consistent, that's how I overcome and that's how I achieve. because I am, I've got about 27 personalities, so I'm up and down all over the place. So for me, I'm the biggest challenge, but the day-to-day routines, the day-to-day habits, them conversations all bring it back together. So I'm my biggest challenge, but I'm my biggest sort of medicine against the challenge, if you like. Whereas I know I'm the challenge, I know I'm the problem, but by doing these things day in, day out, I accept where I am and what I'm doing, and I understand the challenges. But I just love it. I just love it. In the end, it is me.
Gav, I smiled when you said that. I genuinely believe that self-awareness is one of the best success metrics that you can have in business, and to be
Hmm.
that level of self-aware, to sort of like look inwards, when you've got challenges, that is the quickest way to succeed and overcome those challenges is to look inwards first.
It's
And
really weird actually, because once I sort of understood that a couple of years into doing this, done like a lot of self growth bits and pieces. Once you actually start saying little things, I've just seen someone there like Donna say, I totally get what you're saying. Once I've actually started saying to people, do you know what, I've got so much energy, it's actually sometimes a bit of a negative, and go, like, oh, I've just got to home it in on this. People actually turn around and go, God, do you know what? I find I'm the other way. I've got no energy. How can? And you say, well, if you know you've got no energy, find a way to get yourself energy. Like for me, the way I've learned to deal with my energy is to go for a sauna every morning. It just fucking
mm,
chills me out.
yeah, I love that. I love that. Right, guys, if you've enjoyed this webinar, please tell your friends, tell your colleagues, tell anyone in property that they can now watch it back in UK Homes Network for free. Gav is in UK Homes Network. He'll probably be in there this evening. So if you want to ask any more questions or you want to network with Gav, find out some of the deals that he's been working on, and find out a little bit more about why he's in Sunderland at the moment, all the
Yeah.
way away from home, then please do reach out to Gav.
Can I tell you one last question thing before we go? This
Go for it.
goes to talking to people. So you've just touched it there. I'm in Sunderland, 233 miles, I think it's from my house, with an architect who lives 5 miles from my house, and we are both having our meeting up here. That is through talking to people who live within a close proximity of you. We both realise that we are in property and we invest in the same area, but also live 230 miles away.
Amazing. The proof is in the pudding then. There
It
you
is,
go.
mate. That's what I'm saying. Just talk to everyone. It works.
Right. Well, 83 Properties Network and events are all in the events tab of UK Homes Network. So if you want to check those out, Gav regularly posts the podcast when new episodes are released into the platform. So please do make sure you give those a listen. And next week on Monday the 6th at 7 o'clock, I'm going to be joined by Louise, the founder of Wildkind Interiors, who's going to be talking about design better. Oh, sorry. It's called Design First, Build Smarter. There you go. So she's going to be talking about how interior design directly affects every project that you're doing. So I hope you'll join us for that one. It's going to be a great session. We are doing these webinars every single week. We're also looking at bringing in some bonus episodes on a Thursday as well. Again, live versions. So please do make sure you check out those. And please, if you've enjoyed this webinar, let Gav know, show him some appreciation in UK Homes Network, and please do reach out to him. Gav, I just want to say a massive thank you to me. I've really, really enjoyed tonight's session. You've been a brilliant guest and given us a
Thanks,
lot of
man.
insight into your journey through property. So thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, and I look forward to catching up soon.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
mate.
Have a lovely evening, and we'll catch you soon.
Cheers now. Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.